This is an exercise. Good morning. This is a special report to bring our viewers up to date on the recovery efforts underway as responders continue to clean up from the catastrophic explosion of a dirty bomb in Philadelphia. As many as 1 million people are impacted in an area 50 miles long and 10 miles wide. The EPA, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, City of Philadelphia, and other agencies supporting Emergency Support Function 10 continue to be involved with radiological stabilization, mitigation, and cleanup activities.
On Monday, April 26, 2010, over 1,000 federal, state, and local responders convened in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for Liberty RADx, a 5-day national Tier 2 full-scale exercise based on a fictional terrorist attack involving a radiological dispersal device, or RDD, commonly known as a dirty bomb.
This really started more than 2 years ago with the development of what we call our approach to RDD response that Region 3, 4, and 5 put together as part of a EPA agency-wide exercise looking at various different scenarios. We were able to take that approach and build on that to develop an exercise involving many federal agencies and specifically the state of Pennsylvania and the city of Philadelphia.
Under the National Response Framework, federal agencies support state and local governments during natural and man-made emergencies and disasters. Federal support is coordinated by the Department of Homeland Security. EPA's role, along with the U.S. Coast Guard, is to lead Emergency Support Function 10, Oil and Hazardous Materials Response. EPA's responsibilities include efforts to detect, identify, clean up, or dispose of released oil or hazardous materials. At Liberty RADx, EPA worked with the Department of Energy, Health and Human Services, the Army Corps of Engineers, and others to address widespread radiation contamination resulting from an RDD. The time frame is the post-emergency phase of the incident, roughly 30 to 90 days after the attack, when initial emergency response activities are completed and intermediate phase activities such as radiation mitigation and cleanup activities are underway, and responders, government officials, the public, and all stakeholders are planning the long-term cleanup and community recovery.
There's been a number of exercises that have addressed the initial emergency phase, but not really this post-emergency phase. We went into this thinking we would have 500-600 people. We ended up, there's over 1,000 people here this week. I think we're up to 30 different federal, state, and local organizations involved and playing in the exercise. There's probably 7 to 9 countries who have sent representatives to watch, observe, learn how we have structured this response activity and how we approach a dirty bomb incident. We go out and assess and sample the impact.
Philadelphia is the work, play, living area of 3.5 million people. So a radiation exercise is important because of the long-term ramifications that it has on a region like the city of Philadelphia. It allows us to exercise the fire department along with other city agencies, and especially our hazardous materials unit.
Radiation is particularly troublesome because I think it's going to create a lot of fear and concern among the population. Also, radiation can permeate all aspects of the environment, air, water, as well as land, and so it's going to be very important that we can get out quickly with sampling capability so that we can tell what areas are contaminated, what areas are dangerous, and what is not, and then we can feed that information to the public.
To plan an exercise of this magnitude, a team of over 180 planners needed to generate detailed historical documents and volumes of accurate notional data that incident management teams and field responders could reference 30 to 90 days into the event. Responders from federal, state, and local partner agencies, all 10 EPA regions, and EPA national special teams worked at 12 venues around the city, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and EPA headquarters in Washington. The Headquarters Emergency Operations Center in Washington served as the national communications hub, providing critical data to upper-level scientists and decision-makers.
Our focus was to work through the details of having a headquarters EOC that is fully activated, fully staffed, to provide our traditional situational awareness support to headquarters senior management, but primarily to serve in the senior level policy assistance and support role that a headquarters office would provide.
Federal agencies supporting state and local officials and other emergency support functions worked at the Joint Field Office, staged at FEMA Region 3 headquarters. FEMA leads this effort.
We have it broken up into about 4 functional areas. We have a small Joint Information Center. We have the Operations Cell, where all of the ESF watchstanders have their desks. And then we also have 2 community recovery facilitated discussion groups. We have ESF 6, which encompasses housing, sheltering issues, and then we have ESF 4, which is long-term community recovery.
Because an emergency of this magnitude would impact countless residents, businesses, and historical properties, a cleanup advisory forum was formed to assist decision makers. The Community Advisory Panel, or CAP, made up of community leaders, clergy, and concerned citizens, voiced concerns of the affected populace and suggestions for helping the community.
I think the biggest concerns were balancing recovery and cleanup with economics. They were concerned about vulnerable populations. They were concerned about fairness. They were concerned about their property values.
And those that do, to be able to come together in a crisis in their localized area.
They were just generally concerned about the well-being of the individuals from the community.
A command post was established at the Sheraton Center City to house the multi-agency incident management team that planned radiation monitoring, mitigation, cleanup, and waste management and disposal activities.
Any exercise, whether it's a real exercise or an actual event, coordination, information transfer is always a stumbling block. It's difficulty in the real world, difficulty in an exercise. Now in this case, we had some tremendous information transfer. We had spirited debates that brought up real life problems and successes, and learned a lot and a lot of opportunity to get better next time.
A unified command integrated federal, state, and local personnel to jointly direct response activities from the Sheraton Command Post. The operations section directed actions to meet the incident objectives. The logistics section provided resources, services, and support. The finance section tracked and managed response costs and contract support. The planning section developed all response plans and tracked data and progress. Within the planning section, EPA, state, local, and other federal scientists formed the Environmental Unit, or EU. The EU analyzed sample data and evaluated risks in order to develop short and long-term assessment and cleanup strategies. A public information office was also set up to gather and communicate timely, accurate, and coordinated information to government agencies and the public. Much of the command post staff were members of the EPA Response Support Corps, or RSC, comprised of EPA volunteers from across the country. The RSC supplements and supports EPA's emergency responders during national disasters. Over 300 EPA RSC members participated in Liberty RADx.
Functional forms that you're filling out now need to stay with the piece of equipment.
Field teams also deployed from the command post each morning after prepping equipment and receiving assignments. At both the Northeast Wastewater Pollution Control Plant and Baxter Drinking Water Plant, assessment teams helped the Philadelphia Water Department determine impacts to the water supply through monitoring, survey, and multimedia sampling.
The city has a combined sewer system where any rainfall that would have washed off the cesium would have gone into the sewer system, mixed with the street runoff, and the sanitary sewer ended up in the treatment plant. We would have had to make all those sort of measurements, determine how we were going to handle that. We would want to make sure the drinking water is safe.
Liberty Radex also served as an ideal training ground for EPA Radiation Task Force leaders, a cadre of EPA volunteers that lead radiation survey teams during major radiological contamination incidents and exercises.
They're from various other programs, air, water, waste, remedial cleanup programs. And trained them up, gave them 2 weeks of training on using rad instrumentation, and they really came in and performed.
A number of activities were staged at the Philadelphia Fire Training Academy. The site served as a stand-in for the debris zone, the area immediately surrounding the explosion. Because of concerns about debris from the bomb blast, assessment teams took an all-hazards approach to sampling. Instead of sampling solely for radiological activity, air sample teams checked for other chemical hazards resulting from the blast. An on-site sample control point trailer also provided capabilities for mixed hazardous waste.
Other activities that were taking place at the Fire Academy venue included EPA Radiological Emergency Response teams merging with the U.S. Postal Service. So they wanted to go in and use EPA health physics expertise to assist them in screening packages, decontaminating packages, because if U.S. Postal Service was impacted, one of their first priorities would be going in and retrieving these high-value items.
Like the Fire Training Academy, radiation assessment teams rotated through the Patco subway location for 3 days. Both locations also served as test beds for new radiation mitigation and decontamination technologies.
I think the goal of the mitigation team was to take some of these technologies that we have looked at in research and that maybe the DOE has used in the past and see if they could actually be implemented for a cleanup of an RDD. And we weren't looking at efficacy, we were just looking at, can we deploy these technologies, how easy are they to use? We were determining stuff like application rate and waste volume. We looked at what type of waste is generated, how much waste is generated, does that waste need to be treated? So getting a lot of useful information that you don't get unless you actually go out and use the technology in the field.
Along the Delaware River, the Coast Guard teamed with RTFL and START personnel to assess the impact made on the Coast Guard's port facility.
Health and safety.
The Coast Guard is participating in this exercise to give the responders the opportunity to practice using the equipment in a shipboard environment, because operating the equipment on a vessel could be a little bit different than operating it on the ground. This is a very busy commercial port, and there's a lot of pressures to get an area cleaned up after an event in order to get commerce moving again.
objective was to send teams out there to characterize the roadway itself, to understand what kind of resuspension from roadway traffic would happen. In addition, we also demonstrated characterization techniques using NDT's Gamma Emergency Mapper.
What you're looking at is the latest technological advancement in radiological assessment. What this is a sodium iodide detector that is very, very powerful, very, very sensitive. We can take this and do an automatic radiological assessment of an entire city.
Samples from all field venues were transported to the Navy Yard, where teams logged in, prepared, and then analyzed the samples using EPA's Radiological Emergency Response Team on-site mobile laboratory.
Check to make sure that you are
Liberty RadX gives us the ability to take what we do in our offices and our desktop scenarios and really put it into real life action. You can plan as much as you want, but if you don't get out there and actually start implementing it and seeing if those things you've talked about really work in real life scenarios, you just don't know how you're going to respond when you actually have an incident. And hopefully we won't, but we want to be prepared if we do.
Taking the suit off and then sit down and then back up and exposing yourself. Be careful. Peel the time back down. Remember that one.
We want to bring the people in here who have an interest to learn. They have the skills, they have the training, and bring them together as a team and get them organized and able to respond. And it's a much better learning environment, and it'll take home the lessons that we want to learn from something like this and prepare us for the future responses.
I think what surprised me most was the ability of EPA and EPA staffers to come together to undertake a challenge that nobody's undertaken before, to confront technical, human, and administrative issues and get a job done on this scale. And it's also a testament to their dedication and their desire to help and desire to help the public and the community and the environment, and their ability to come together and solve problems.
Liberty RadX succeeded on many levels. While EPA headquarters and regional offices identified needed adjustments and improvements to preparedness plans, lessons learned will improve public safety, readiness, and the design of future exercises. Most importantly, Liberty RadX players can now draw on their exercise experience and relationships with other state, federal, and local responders to better serve our nation in the event of a real RAD incident.